Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this session titled From Evaluation to Coaching Humanizing Feedback to Build Trust and Capacity. My name is Dr. Furwa Rizvi from California State University, Stanislaus, and I'm excited to share our ideas that reimagine teacher evaluation as a coaching centered process that strengthens trust, reflection, and equity. So, this presentation draws from our direct work with pre-service, in-service teachers, and university supervisors, as well as our article in press, From Evaluation to Collaboration, Building Trust Through Coaching-Centered Practice. So today we're going to be moving through three key parts. First, the problem, why traditional evaluation often misses its purpose. Then, four research-based frameworks that transform feedback. And finally, an example of how these ideas look in practice. And so today, our central guiding question is, what if evaluation could be modeled as a pathway for growth rather than a moment of judgment? And so, too often, evaluation feels like a high stakes judgment instead of a learning opportunity. So, let's look at these two different perspectives. First, I'll pull some quotes from a student teacher's emotional experience after a rocky formal observation. Before even sitting down for the debriefing, I felt like a complete failure. With each bullet point, I sank further into my seat. I had excelled through my credential program, but that one observation eclipsed all of it. And so now let's look at from an administrator who is the evaluator. After 30 minutes reviewing procedures, the superintendent had said, if you remember one thing, it's this: meet all deadlines. I sat there stunned. Deadlines? But what about improving instruction? So these two voices reflect a shared frustration. Evaluation is often procedural, compliance based, and disconnected from real professional growth. And so, how do we shift this? It begins from reframing evaluation as a relationship driven process. We're moving from compliance, checklists, and surveillance to reflection through dialogue that honors teacher thinking, from collaboration, where feedback is co constructed, to trust, where authentic growth becomes possible. So, coaching centered evaluation transforms evaluation from a top down event into a partnership for learning. We are not trying to shift procedures that are already in place, we want to evolve them into a coaching centered framework. All right, so let's look at four different frameworks. So, framework one is the ladder of inference. And so it helps evaluators and supervisors slow down the leap from observation to conclusion. We all do this. We see something, we interpret it, and jump to judgment. So, for instance, we might notice disengaged students and assume poor management. Instead, the latter invites us to pause and ask, what specific evidence supports this conclusion? Or what else might explain what I saw? The simple pause reduces bias and opens space for shared reflection. And so, this next model, the specificity and objectivity matrix, pushes us to move away from feedback that is vague and judgmental to make our feedback more descriptive and give feedback for teachers that's more actionable. And so let's zoom into some examples of when we're recording feedback for teachers or teacher candidates. So, for example, the students were bored. That's judgmental and vague. Or three students in the back were off task during the 15-minute independent work period. That's objective and specific. So teachers can't act on vague statements, but they can reflect on clear, neutral evidence. So this precision builds trust and moves feedback from opinion to observation. All right. So now let's look at this framework Coaching for Equity. This is Elena Aguilar's Coaching for Equity, which centers emotional safety, inquiry, and justice in feedback conversations. She reminds us that coaching isn't neutral, it must actively interrupt bias and create conditions where teachers feel safe to reflect. We can lead with inquiry. What were you thinking when? And we can build emotional trust by creating spaces where vulnerability isn't punished. And then we can center equity by naming how identity and systemic bias shape teaching and evaluation. When we lead with curiosity instead of correction, evaluation becomes dialogue and not judgment. All right, so this framework for the 5D rubric, this final framework, is the 5D instructional growth rubric from the Center for Educational Leadership. And it offers a shared language for reflection. It looks at 5 different areas: purpose, student engagement, classroom, environment and culture, curriculum and pedagogy, and assessment. So when used as a coaching tool, not as a rating scale, the 5D rubric helps supervisors and teachers co construct meaningful goals. It shifts the conversation from where do you score to how can we grow together? And so, together, these frameworks create a complete system for coaching centered evaluation. The ladder of inference helps us slow down assumptions. The specificity and objectivity matrix grounds feedback and observable evidence. The coaching for equity ensures empathy and inquiry at the center. And the 5D rubric provides a structure for growth. And when woven together, they shift from evaluation to compliance to capacity building, from surveillance to support. And so let me share one example from my own supervision work. During an observation, a student teacher's nerves were visible as students grew distracted and resistant. And instead of myself rushing to give them advice, I first used the principles of coaching for equity, making space for emotion and reflection. So then I highlighted a specific moment where this teacher candidate re engaged a student who often struggled. This evidence based affirmation built trust. It showed I was watching not just for errors, but for strengths. And from there, we use a 5D rubric to discuss strategies for engagement and classroom culture. That single shift from judgment to coaching completely changed the tone of our work together. And so, what can we take away from this? When we humanize feedback, evaluation transforms from a moment of anxiety into an opportunity for authentic professional growth. So, trust. Relationships make growth possible. Feedback lands when safety and respect come first. Then we have reflection. Evaluators and teachers learn together through inquiry and dialogue. Specificity, clear, evidence based feedback replaces vague judgment. Equity, coaching that centers empathy and identity, honors diverse experiences, and dismantles biases. So, trust is the starting place for all meaningful feedback. Without it, even the best frameworks can't take root. So, thank you for taking this time to reflect with me. And I hope you'll be able to try one of these frameworks in your next feedback conversation and see how it changes the tone. So, feel free to reach out. I've included my email, also my LinkedIn, and I hope you do. And we can continue this dialogue even further. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye.